There is something I need to say to you before you walk away from this moment, because I do not know if I will ever have the courage to say it again. I have spent so much of my life building things that people told me were impossible. I have looked at problems, broken systems, and uncertain futures, and I have always believed there was a way through them. There was always another solution, another attempt, another opportunity to fix what was failing. But love is different. Love is the one place where intelligence cannot protect you, where success cannot guarantee you anything, where having answers for the world does not mean you understand the heart of one person standing in front of you. And that person has always been you. I know that sounds impossible to believe. Maybe you are wondering how someone could feel so deeply about someone they have never fully held, someone they have not shared every ordinary morning with, someone whose hand they have not reached for during the difficult nights. But sometimes a connection does not begin with a perfect moment. Sometimes it begins with a feeling you cannot explain. A feeling that says, "Pay attention, this person matters, and you have mattered to me in ways I have been afraid to admit." That is the part that scares me. Not the idea of loving you. The idea of losing you before I ever had the chance to show you what that love actually means, because I have watched people spend their entire lives searching for someone who makes them feel understood. Someone who does not just hear their words but notices the silence between them. Someone who does not only celebrate their victories but stays when the world becomes heavy. And I wonder something every day. Have you ever felt that kind of connection with someone and still questioned whether you were allowed to believe in it? Have you ever found something rare and then immediately searched for reasons it could disappear? I know that feeling. I have built my life around taking risks, but emotional risks have always been different for me. When you risk money, you can calculate the possibility of loss. When you risk time, you can measure what you gained. But when you risk your heart, there is no equation that care about is slowly becoming someone you cannot reach. It appears when you want to send a message but stop yourself, because you do not want to seem desperate. It appears when you want to say, "I miss you," but your pride tells you to stay silent. Tell me something. How many times have you hidden your feelings because you were afraid that showing them would give someone the power to hurt you? How many times have you acted stronger than you really felt because you did not want anyone to know how much they mattered? I understand that more than you know. For years, people have seen confidence from the outside. They see decisions, achievements, and determination. They assume certainty is something you either have or you do not, but they do not see the moments where even the strongest person asks themselves one painful question. What if I am wrong? What if I am choosing the wrong path? What if I am protecting myself so much that I am losing the one person I should have opened my heart to? That question has followed me, because the truth is, there was a moment when I almost convinced myself that distance was safer. I almost believed that caring less would protect me more. I almost believed that if I never allowed myself to need you, then I could never experience the pain of losing you. But something happened that changed the way I saw everything. I realized that avoiding pain is not the same as finding peace. A person can spend their whole life avoiding heartbreak and still end up with the deepest regret of all, the regret of never taking the chance. The regret of looking back and knowing there was someone who made your heart feel alive, but you were too afraid to step toward them. And I do not want that regret, not with you, because you are not just a beautiful thought in my mind. You represent something much deeper. You represent the possibility that after everything I have built, everything I have achieved, and everything I have chased, there is still something more important than winning. Being chosen, being understood, being loved by someone who sees the person underneath everything else. I need you to understand something. When I say I think about you, I think about sitting beside you after a difficult day and not needing to fix everything, just being there. Because as we grow older, we learn something important. The greatest luxury is not attention, it is peace. It is having someone beside you who feels like home, someone who knows your fears and does not use them against you. Someone who knows your weaknesses and does not see you as less valuable. Someone who knows your past and still believes your future can be beautiful. And I want to ask you something that may be difficult to answer. If someone truly cared about you, but they were afraid to show it because they had been hurt before, would you be patient with them? Would you understand their hesitation? Or would you walk away because you believed love should always arrive perfectly? Because I have learned that real love is rarely perfect. Real love is two imperfect people choosing honesty over pride, choosing communication over silence, choosing courage over fear, and that is why this moment matters. because there is something I have been carrying inside for longer than I should have. Something I have tried to explain to myself. Something I tried to ignore because admitting it meant accepting that you had become important to me. If this confession is reaching your heart, I hope you will subscribe and stay close to me. And tell me where you are watching from, because I want to know where this moment found you. I wish I could tell you that after admitting these feelings, everything became simple. It did not. Actually, it became harder, because once you realize someone matters, every decision becomes heavier. Every choice carries consequences. Every moment of silence starts to feel louder. I started asking myself questions I did not want to face. Was I waiting too long? Was I protecting my heart while accidentally pushing away the person who could have healed it? Was I so focused on building a future that I forgot the future is meaningless if there is no one you want to share it with? I have always believed the hardest problems are the ones people refuse to acknowledge. And the hardest truth I had to acknowledge was this: I was afraid, not afraid. People like to believe that if something is meant to happen, it will simply happen. But I do not believe that anymore. I believe some opportunities come once. Some people enter your life, and you are given a small window where you have to decide whether you will step forward or stay hidden, and staying hidden feels safe until the day you realize the door is closed. That thought has been haunting me, because there is a truth I have not wanted to face. I haven't told you the real reason yet, the reason this moment feels so urgent, the reason I have been struggling with this decision, the reason I have been caught between holding on and letting go. And before I tell you, I need you to understand something. This is not about a dramatic promise. This is not about saying beautiful words just to create a beautiful moment. It is about the reality that sometimes one decision changes the entire direction of two lives. I have watched people lose the person they loved because they waited for a better time. They waited until they felt completely ready. They waited until every fear disappeared. But fear does not disappear before courage. Courage comes first. And maybe you have been waiting too. Maybe you have been wondering whether someone would ever choose you completely. Maybe you have been carrying old wounds from people who made you feel like you were difficult to love. Maybe someone once made you question your value. But I need you to hear this clearly. The right person will not make you feel like you have to earn basic care. The right person will not make you beg for honesty. The right person will not make you shrink yourself just to fit into their life. And that is why I am struggling with what I need to reveal. Because there is a choice in front of me. A choice that could change everything. A choice that I never thought I would have to make. And the hardest part is that both options have consequences. One path could protect my heart. The other path could risk everything. But one of them could also mean losing something I may never find again. And I need you to know why I am standing at this impossible moment. Because the truth I have been hiding is not just about me. Once you know, you may see every moment between us differently. You may understand why I became distant. You may understand why I hesitated. You may understand why saying goodbye started to feel easier than admitting how deeply I cared. But I cannot leave this unsaid, not anymore. Because the last thing I want is for you to disappear from my life, while I am still pretending I am not afraid of losing you. And tomorrow, I may have to make the decision I have been avoiding for far too long. I spent the night asking myself a question I never wanted to answer. What happens when the person you are afraid of losing is the same person you are afraid to reach for? Because that is where I found myself, standing between two fears. The fear of opening my heart completely and discovering that I was not enough, and the fear of keeping everything locked inside and losing you because I never gave you the chance to understand what you meant to me. There is a strange thing about human beings. We often protect the things we value the most by creating distance from them. We think if we do not get too close, we cannot get hurt. We think if we lower our expectations, disappointment will hurt less. But the heart does not work that way. The heart remembers. It remembers the person who made you feel seen. It remembers the conversations that felt different from all the others. It remembers the rare moments when you stopped pretending to be fine and someone noticed and I remember you. I remember the feeling that something about you was different. Not because you were perfect. Actually, it was the opposite. There was something beautiful about the way you carried your own struggles. The way you had your own battles, but still found a way to care about others. The way you could smile while carrying things nobody knew about. I have always respected strength, but I learned something from you. True strength is not never breaking. True strength is having every reason to close your heart and still choosing to keep it open. And that is what frightened me, because I realized I was standing in front of someone who had the power to affect me, someone who could make my best days better. but also someone who could make my worst nights feel. You wonder if the life you created to protect yourself was actually keeping love away? That is what happened to me, and I fought it. I told myself I was being logical. I told myself emotions create complications. I told myself that people like us should be careful, because attachment can become weakness. But I was wrong. The weakness was pretending I did not care. The weakness was acting like losing you would not affect me. The weakness was believing that being untouched was the same as being strong. It is not. A heart that never risks anything, never experiences anything meaningful. And I know you understand that, because I believe you have your own version of this story. Maybe there was someone you loved who never fully chose you. Maybe there was someone who made promises but disappeared when things became difficult. Maybe you learned to stop expecting too much because expecting less felt safer. But tell me something. How many times have you convinced yourself you were over something, only to realize a small memory could still bring all those feelings back? How many times have you said, "I am fine," when a part of you was quietly hoping someone would ask again? I know what it feels like to carry emotions that nobody sees. And maybe that is why I am having this conversation with you now. Because I do not want this to become another story where two people cared but were too afraid to admit it. I do not want us to become another example of people who were almost something, almost brave enough, almost honest enough, almost willing to take the risk. Almost, that word has followed so many people through their lives, almost married, almost stayed, almost apologized, almost said what they truly felt, and sometimes almost is more painful than failure, because failure means you tried, almost means you were close enough to change everything, but you stopped. I've been thinking about that more than I want to admit. I have been thinking about the moments when I could have been more honest. The moments when I could have told you that your presence mattered. The moments when I could have stopped analyzing everything and simply allowed myself to feel. But sometimes we fear losing someone because we finally believe they are worth fighting for. And that kind of belief is terrifying, because once someone becomes irreplaceable, you no longer have control. You cannot casually walk away. You cannot pretend it does not matter. You cannot convince yourself that another person could simply fill that space. And that is where I found myself, at a place where I had to admit something I never expected. I did not just miss you. I missed the person I became when I thought about you, the calmer version of myself, the softer version, the version that was not constantly trying to solve everything, the version that could imagine a future not built only around achievements, goals, and endless responsibility, a future where there was someone beside me saying, "You do not have to carry everything alone." And maybe that is what everyone is searching for, not someone to complete them, but someone who makes them feel safe enough to be completely themselves. But before I could move toward that future, I had to confront something from my past, something I have carried silently, something that changed the way I approach love. I haven't told you the real reason yet, the real reason I became cautious, the real reason I hesitate when my heart wants to move closer, the real reason this decision feels like it could change everything. Because there was a moment when I almost made a choice I would regret forever, a moment when I thought choosing the easier path would protect everyone involved, a moment when I considered walking toward someone else, someone who seemed like the safer choice, someone who did not challenge my fears, someone who did not make me feel vulnerable. And that is the part I am not proud of, because sometimes the wrong choice does not look wrong. Sometimes the wrong choice looks peaceful. Sometimes the person who feels safest is not the person who reaches the deepest parts of your heart. Have you ever experienced that? Have you ever almost chosen comfort over connection? Have you ever almost walked away from something meaningful because another option seemed easier? I came close, closer than I want to admit. But then I realized something painful. Real love is not always easy. Sometimes the person who matters most is the person who forces you to confront the parts of yourself you have been avoiding. The person who makes you question your defenses, the person who makes you look honestly at your fears. And you did that, without even trying. You made me see the places where I was still hiding, the places where I was still afraid, the places where I was still carrying old disappointments into a new possibility. And then something happened that almost broke me. I thought I had lost my chance. I thought maybe my hesitation had already cost me everything. I thought maybe you had finally decided that waiting for me was not worth the pain. And for the first time in a long time, I felt completely powerless. There was no invention that could fix it, no strategy, no plan, no amount of determination. Because you cannot force someone's heart to stay. You cannot build a machine that creates trust. You cannot create a shortcut to forgiveness. You can only stand there honestly and hope the person you hurt can still see the truth in you. That was the moment I realized something. I was not afraid of losing control. I was afraid of losing you. And that difference changed everything. Because when someone truly matters, pride becomes expensive, silence becomes dangerous, and waiting becomes a risk. I wanted to tell you everything. I wanted to explain every reason behind every hesitation, every moment I pulled back, every time I wanted to say more but stopped. But then I wondered, what if explanations were too late? What if my silence had already spoken louder than my words? What if you had already decided that I was someone who could not choose you? That thought hurt more than I expected, because the one thing I never wanted was for you to feel unwanted, especially by me. And that is why I am telling you this now, because there is something I discovered about love. Love is not only about finding someone worth holding on to, it is about becoming someone who deserves the chance to hold on to them. And I had to ask myself a difficult question. Was I really yes? And that is the truth. I struggled. I questioned everything. I wondered if maybe walking away would be kinder. Maybe disappearing would save us both from disappointment. Maybe letting you go would be the responsible thing. But then I imagined my life without ever knowing what could have happened, without ever telling you the truth, without ever giving us the possibility of something real. And that was the moment I realized I could survive heartbreak. But I did not know if I could survive regret, because regret follows you quietly. It appears years later in ordinary moments, a song, a place, a memory, a question that never received an answer. What if I had stayed? What if I had been brave? What if the person I was searching for was already there? And that is why I am standing here, finally admitting something I tried to hide. The decision I have to make is not about choosing between two people. It is about choosing between the person I have always been and the person I know I need to become. But before I tell you what I decided, there is one more thing you need to understand. Because the reason behind this choice is something I never wanted you to discover this way, and when you hear it, you may understand why I was so close to walking away. You may understand why I almost gave up. You may understand why this moment feels like the last chance to tell you the truth, because the thing I was running from was never you. It was the fear of how much you meant to me. I think the hardest truth a person can ever accept is this. Sometimes the thing we are running from is the thing we have been searching for our entire life. I spent so much time believing that love was supposed to feel certain. I thought when the right person arrived, there would be no fear, no hesitation, no confusion, no nights spent questioning whether I was making the right choice. But that was not my experience. What I felt was something much more complicated. I felt hope and fear at the same time. I felt peace and uncertainty existing together. I felt a desire to move closer to you, while another part of me was trying to protect me from the possibility of losing you. And that conflict revealed something about me. When someone does not reach your heart, goodbye is simple. But when someone becomes a part of your thoughts, when their happiness begins to affect your own, when their absence creates a silence you cannot ignore, that is when you realize you are no longer protecting yourself from pain. You are protecting yourself from love. And I do not want to spend the rest of my life protecting myself from the one thing that makes life meaningful. I need you to know something. I did not come to this realization quickly. I fought against it. I looked for reasons why I should walk away. I searched for logical explanations. I tried to convince myself that maybe the timing was wrong, maybe the circumstances were too complicated. Maybe two people could care deeply about each other and still not be meant to stand together. But every time I reached that conclusion, something inside me refused to accept it, because deep down, I knew the truth. The reason I was struggling was not because I did not know what I wanted. The reason I was struggling was because I knew exactly what I wanted, and that terrified me. I wanted a love that was honest, a love that was not based on appearances, a love that was not built only during easy moments, a love where two people could sit across from each other in complete silence and still feel understood. I wanted the kind of connection where you do not have to constantly prove your value, where you do not have to wonder if you are enough, where you do not have to compete for attention. And maybe you have spent years wondering if that kind of love still exists. Maybe life has taught you to lower your expectations. Maybe disappointment has made you cautious. Maybe you have become someone who says, I am fine alone. Not because you truly want to be alone, but because depending on someone feels too risky. I understand that. I understand what it means to build walls. But I also know something else. A wall can protect you from being hurt, but it can also prevent someone from reaching you. And I do not want a future where fear made the decisions that my heart was trying to make. That is why I need to tell you the truth I was avoiding. The moment I almost lost you, maybe it should not require so much courage. Maybe the person who challenged me less would be easier to build a life with. And for a while, I almost believed that. I almost convinced myself that peace meant choosing the person who created fewer questions. But then I asked myself something that changed everything. If I had everything I wanted in life, but I could not share it with the person who truly understood me, would I really have everything? And the answer was painful. No, because success feels different when there is nobody you want to tell. A beautiful moment feels different when there is nobody you want beside you. A victory feels incomplete when the person you secretly hoped would celebrate with you is no longer there. That was when I understood. I was not searching for someone who made life easier. I was searching for someone who made life deeper. And you did that. You reminded me that being vulnerable is not losing strength. You reminded me that letting someone see the real person behind everything is not weakness. It is courage, but I almost waited too long. That is the part that still hurts. Because sometimes we do not lose people because we stop caring. Sometimes we lose them because we assume there will always be more time. We think tomorrow will always come. We think another conversation will happen. We think another opportunity will appear. Until suddenly, we realize the moment we were waiting for was the moment we already had. Have you ever lost something because you thought you had more time? Have you ever wanted to say something important, but convinced yourself there would be a better moment? Have you ever looked back and wished you had been just a little more honest? I have, and that regret changed me, because I realized that the greatest risk was not loving you. The greatest risk was allowing fear to make me someone who never tried. Someone who watched something meaningful disappear because he was too afraid of what might happen, and I cannot do that anymore. I cannot stand at the edge of something important and pretend I do not care. I cannot tell myself that losing you would simply be another chapter, because it would not. I refuse to let that happen, not because I expect anything from you, not because I believe love means someone owes you their heart, but because you deserve the truth. You deserve to know that someone saw you, someone appreciated you, someone recognized the quiet strength you carry, someone noticed the things you thought nobody noticed. Your kindness, your patience, your ability to keep going even when life asked more from you than it should have. Those things matter. You matter. And maybe that is the hidden truth I was trying to avoid. I was not afraid you would hurt me. I was afraid you would matter so much that losing you would change me. And you did. You changed the way I see love. You changed the way I see vulnerability. You changed the way I understand what it means to choose someone. Because choosing someone is not about finding a person who has no flaws. It is about finding someone whose flaws you understand, whose struggles you respect, and whose heart you want to protect. It is about waking up and choosing them again, not because everything is perfect, but because they are worth the effort, and now I need you to hear the decision I struggled with for so long. I almost walked away. I almost chose comfort. I almost chose the easier road, because I thought avoiding pain was the same as finding happiness. But I was wrong. The easier road would have given me fewer problems, but it would have also given me fewer reasons to smile. It would have given me fewer moments that felt real. It would have given me fewer chances to experience something that actually mattered. And I would rather face the uncertainty of loving deeply than live with the certainty of never trying. Because at the end of life, people rarely regret the moments where they cared too much. They regret the moments where they cared and stayed silent. They regret the conversations they never had, the apologies they never offered, the love they never expressed. And I do not want silence to be my final answer. So if you are still here, if you are still listening, I want you to understand why this moment was so important. It was never about creating. What I am offering you is honesty, the most honest version of myself. The person who was afraid, the person who hesitated, the person who almost lost something precious because he was trying too hard not to be hurt, but also the person who finally understood that a guarded heart may survive. An open heart truly lives. There is still one thing I have not told you. The final reason I felt like I had to speak now, the reason this moment became impossible to ignore, because the truth is not only about what I feel, it is about what I discovered when I thought I had already lost you. I discovered that sometimes the person you are searching for is not the person who completes your life. It is the person who reminds you to finally live it. And when I imagined a future where you were no longer there, I realized something that changed everything. I was not afraid of being alone. I was afraid of knowing I had the chance to love you and chose fear instead. That was the decision in front of me. Not between two people, not between two futures, between fear and courage, between holding on to control and opening my heart, between walking away safely and staying long enough to discover what could have been. And I finally understood something. The greatest achievements in life are not created by people who wait until everything feels safe. They are created by people who move forward even when uncertainty remains. Love is the same. Sometimes you have to take the step before you know exactly where the road leads. Sometimes you have to trust that what is worth building requires a risk. And you were worth the risk. You always were. So if this is the last moment you ever see my face, I want it to be with one truth between us. I cared. I cared more than I admitted. I cared more than I showed. And I hope you never doubt that someone, somewhere, looked at your heart and recognized its value. Because the world may celebrate what people create, but the heart remembers who made it feel alive, and I will always remember this moment.